Hello, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host of Fiberchats, and my guest today is Lotta from Sweden, right? Hi, Lotta.
Yes, it was correct. Great.
Well, welcome to Fiberchats. I love having you here. And I stumbled on your account, and it just so eye-catching because you have all those gorgeous mittens that you design. Um,
Thank you.
so I've read a story about how you started, and it didn't start from a good place, right?
No, we started from a bad place actually. I was burned out and more not depressed, more like tired and panic attacks. A lot of anxiety and panic attacks. I couldn't go out, so the only thing I could do was to knit.
And how old
And
were you when you first started knitting? Were you always
oh, I
knitting?
just started this 3 years ago when I went to school when I was around 15. You had to knit in school, and that was what I knitted. And then I haven't knit.
So it
But my
wasn't
mother,
like a lifelong passion, basically. It was just something
no,
you
not at
picked,
all. It's a late passion,
right?
but now it's really passion.
Right. So when you started knitting, did you immediately start with mittens? Like, why mittens?
Yes, I started with knitting because it was the smallest thing I could knit. I think I wanted to get ready very fast. So to do a jumper or something, it felt too big. So I just took the smallest thing I could do. And I don't like to just knit with one color. I want to do with patterns or something, but otherwise it gets boring.
Right. So
Yeah.
you started knitting your first pair of mittens. What was it? Do you remember?
No, probably some with flowers or some like this classic what you say Lithuania.
Right.
Yeah, this classic pattern, I think, more or less. There are so many beautiful mittens, so I did about 10 of these with the flowers and animals and owls and so on. And I started to think I could do this myself
So
and do.
what was your first design?
Actually, it was a classic, more of the less beautiful pattern. All my classic patterns are for free, so you can download them free on Ravelry. And then, so it was one of those actually. And then I did some Harry Potter thing, I think. And then I very early started with faces because I think it was so funny to do faces. It was like a happening when I did it the first time. And while knitting, it's so fun while knitting because you see the face grow
Slowly
slowly,
emerging.
slowly it takes place. And some people you cannot see it's who it is before you come to the eye or the eyebrows or something. So it's very funny knitting, I think.
So you had that thing when you would ask your followers to guess what you were knitting, whose face you were knitting, and you would
Yes.
only show like the bottom part of the.
Yes.
Was there ever like people guessing right away, or was it like people guessing anything but the one that you were knitting?
It's different. I just had I do every Friday. It's Friday question I call it. But now I haven't been knitting so many faces. But for a while it was every week I did it. But it's just one time no one guessed right. But it's so fun to read the answers because it could be the Pope or it could be anyone, and it's
Britney
not.
Spears.
It could be male when it is a female or something. So it's so funny to read the answers. I don't remember who I had last time because it was, but it was so many that guessed the wrong
Did
decision.
those answers give you any ideas of what else to knit?
Oh yes, of course they do. They do. No, I try to do patterns that's not it's just my taste. My taste is more like Beatles and Jimi Hendrix and so on. I don't like this hard rocking guys, but people do. So I try to do whatever people ask me. If someone 10 people write me and ask me, can you do this, then I probably would do it in the end. but it's not everyone that I succeed with. Some of them doesn't work.
Really?
Yeah, I
So,
have done many bad patterns.
so when you do it, like you design it first on the computer, right?
Yes, I take a picture and then I pick it up in Photoshop. And my former life, I worked like a photo retoucher, so I know how to do it. So in Photoshop, I take all the dark parts and all the light parts, and I do it in Photoshop first. And when I do it and I think this could be good, then I try to do it pixels. But I do it pixel by pixel. I don't use a computer, no, a program or something. I do it pixel by pixel, and then I build them, and then I try to check it out if it works and how it looks. But now I know really early if it's going to be a good pattern or not.
Have you
So
ever like done a pattern and then when you knitted it, it looked like something completely opposite from what you imagine it's gonna look?
no, but I have done many patterns. No, because I can see if it's not good or if it's bad. So if I see it's this will I did the Neymar, the football player now just today this evening, and he looks ugly. It's impossible. I cannot do it. He will never be a mitten. So I don't knit him.
He just wasn't meant to be a mitten.
For him.
So then you also do blankets. And when I first watched you sticking that blanket, I mean, my
Yeah.
heart just stopped for a second because it's large, like you knit for so long, and then you put it on like a skirt, and it's like it looks so gorgeous, and then you just take scissors to it, and I'm like, uh, why do you do? Sometimes you do just Fair Isle, uh,
Yeah.
and sometimes you do double-sided knitting.
It's because I
Double.
didn't know how to double knit. So I started to do a blanket. My sister did blankets and she knits like back and forth. But I don't like to purl. So I wanted to knit in the round and then cut it because I don't want to purl. And then I did a couple of patterns, and then I saw people double knitting my patterns, and it turned out so lovely. And I was like ashamed that I couldn't do double knitting. I'm the designer, but I don't know how to do it. So I learned through YouTube.
Did you find
And
it difficult?
no more in your brain, you have to think. So the first, of course, the first things was very complicated. You should think, and when you did the other row, it was the opposite on the first. So it was a lot of thinking. But now when you have done it for a while, it goes by itself. But it took very long time, the first little blanket I did. But now I think it's like more or less like knitting. It goes automatically.
So do you
But
like
it's
when you do the double knitting pattern, do you already have like the image of back and forth right away? Or do you like imagine the front and then you try to reverse the mirror image of the knitting on the back?
no, the knitting, the back comes automatically. It comes from what I do from the normal pattern. So it just turns out like that.
So it's always like a mirror image.
Yes, always like a mirror image. So I don't have to do something. But when you knit double knitting, it's like because you knit two stitches, so it gets wider than normal. So the proportions of the pattern is very different. It gets very much wider than long. So when I do patterns now, I try to adjust them for double knitting.
Right.
So the patterns look very long, but when you knit them, they turn out good.
Do you prefer one method over the other? Like, do you prefer the Fair Isle to double knitting now? or the other way
No, I
around?
think it's fun to do both. Double knitting is also quite, you cannot do faces because the faces look ugly when you reverse them. And then you cannot do text because text will be mirrored. So I use both. Now I'm knitting one blanket with double knitting and one normal.
So you can use the same image, but just two different techniques.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
people can choose which way to go.
yeah,
Oh, that's clever.
right. But it's very fun to do a pattern for blanket because when I have mittens, it's just 80 pixels, and now I can have 200. I can do so many fun things in the pattern, so it's fun to do a blanket.
Right. How big is your yarn stash?
Oh, but it's not huge, but it's okay.
Oh, do
I'm
you
content.
buy yarn per project? Like when you have a project in mind, you go and you buy yarn for it, or you just have yarn?
Before, because I knit mittens, you just need one skein of each color, so it's easy to have a lot. I want to have all colors at home, so I have like 80 different colors or something, so I always can choose one. But if I do a blanket, I have to buy yarn for the blanket because I
Right.
don't have 20 in one color or something, so I buy it for the project.
Right.
And of course, you have a couple of skeins, too much of every color and
And
like that.
those turn into mittens. Is it the same yarn that you use for blankets and mittens, like thickness
No,
wise?
it's
No.
thicker, the one for the blanket. So
Right. Um, do you like how do you choose what you're gonna do next? Like, do you usually gravitate towards more mittens, or blanket took over and like became your new
no, I
passion?
just go by feeling. It's just a feeling.
And
So
how is your anxiety now? Like now that you've been doing it for a while, did it completely disappear, or you still having moments when you like start panicking and then when you grab your knitting?
I knit every evening. It's like from 6 o'clock. That's my sofa time. So nowadays I do other things during the days, but at 6 o'clock I can sit down in the sofa and then I knit until 12 when I go to bed. So I knit around 6 hours every evening, and then I or do patterns or something. Before you called me, I was doing a new pattern and I was listening in on a pod. That's
Right.
that's my evenings, and I like it.
So you mentioned doing other things during daytime. Let's talk about today, because today you had an exciting day, right? You went to the
Yes, I was out
forest.
picking mushrooms. I don't know the name of the mushroom in these yellow ones. What do you
Oh,
call them?
um,
I don't know.
now I'm going blank, of course. So is
Yes.
that something you do like regularly? Do you go into the nature like to recharge and like rest and have fun with friends, or is it like something rare?
I would like to say yes, but that's not true. But normally I go out for walks and so on. And this is in Sweden we have had a very hot summer this summer, and then it came a lot of rain. So it's perfect time for mushrooms now. The woods are filled with it, so everyone is out picking. It's so fun because it's like Christmas. You just go and pick.
So what are you doing with them after you do
I
it?
give them away because I don't eat them. I just like pick them. So my neighbors are so happy. But otherwise I like to be out in nature, of course. But when I relax, I play golf. That's one of my things also. So, but I'm out in the garden. I love working with my garden. So that's more or less the things I do. I grow tomatoes and
And
cucumbers.
cucumbers, I saw the cucumber,
Yes.
the first one when you were munching on IGTV.
Yes.
Tell me
Yeah.
about Instagram and your relationship with Instagram, because you did not expect it to grow so much so fast when you started, right?
No, I just started with Instagram not to tire my friends with knitted stuff.
Same
So
thing.
yes, so my normal Instagram account, I didn't want to put on more mittens. So I just started a knitting account just for me to be able to put out some mittens. But it started to grow really fast, and I had this Instagram spin. I had so many new followers, and I didn't understand Instagram because I'm 50 and I'm not this social media type at all. But then I found it very amusing, and it's so much positive energy in Instagram. People are talking about all these troll or ugly people that say bad things, but they don't exist in knitting world. Not
Right.
in my world. No, it's so much positive energy, and everyone is so nice, and they are cheering me on and coming with tips, and it's amazing. It's like they have really kept me company during these years.
Right. Do you ever get inspired by like what other people do on Instagram? Do you scroll and you're like, oh my God, I have to try that?
Yes, yes, of course. But I'm not this knitter. I knit mittens. That's my thing. And I do patterns, but I'm not so interested in knitting like, oh, I have to do a jumper, or I rather buy them because I don't. So I have to do arms and
Right. What
So
happens to all the mittens and all the blankets that you need?
they are hanging in my small shred outside in my garden. So it's easier to store mittens than blankets, because now I am up in 15 blankets, and they take a lot of space.
Right.
But it's very fun to have them, because I go to fairs and I go and I have this knitting cafes, and it's very nice to have them, to show them, because it's nice to look at, but blankets are quite hard to store. Mittens are easier.
Any tips for other knitters out there how to store them so they don't get damaged?
hang them hang them on the wall. I put on a lot of nails on the wall and then just hang them up. It's like a painting or something. It's very nice.
Right.
And even the blankets I put on the wall, so it's very nice to have them hanging on the wall.
So you mentioned not wanted to bother your friends with knitting pictures.
Mm.
Do you give your mittens as gifts to your friends, to family, to friends, or they've had enough of them?
No, I never give them away. I'm very what do you say?
Attached to them?
Yes, I'm attached to them. Because I just knit one pair. I never knit the same pattern twice.
Right.
So I have to have them because I want one of each pattern to show. So I never give away.
Right.
But sometimes my mother and my sister, they also knit my patterns, and they are more friendly.
So they replicate it.
Mm.
So you just had a book coming out, right, with your mittens. That's so exciting.
Well,
Congratulations.
thank you. I have them here.
It's beautiful. Like I watched your video when you were like
Yeah.
think through that book, and it looks amazing. So how many designs are in there?
18.
Okay.
Oh. So it came out yesterday, and it's been a fun. I work like magazine designer in my real work. So I done this book myself, and it's been a lot of fun. And it took a long time, took a year or something, but it's been fun. And
How did you choose which 18 to put in there?
Oh, I did it together with my editor and so on. We wanted a mix. Now this is there are some Swedish patterns, Swedish artists, but we wanted some animals, some artists, some movies, and a good mixture that could suit everyone that wanted to. You maybe don't want to knit 18 of them, but maybe 5 or 10 or so, depending on your taste.
And is there any plan of translating that book to other languages?
I hope so, but we have to see if it sells, and if it sells, it's hopefully will be translated to other languages. I really hope it should be, and of course in English that have the most followers. But anyway, it's charts, so it's easy to knit without knowing the language, because you can just knit after the charts and there's no problem. But of course it could be nice to read some. I've done this book, it's me myself, I don't like too much text, so I wanted it to be easy, just few rows of text and many pictures. So it's more or less a picture book with small text things,
Right.
but more pictures and charts than text.
So when you're on Instagram, do you get the feeling that people know you? Or do you get like a lot of personal questions that you don't expect from total strangers? Like,
no, not personal, no. But of course, I can also see, because I have quite a lot of followers now, and if I take the subway, it could be that people are looking at me in a very strange way, and that's totally new for me. And then suddenly someone comes up to me, "Oh, you're knitting Lotta," and it's like I cannot believe it, because it's just me that is out on the subway, and it's a new thing. But of course, it's very fun when people do like that, but it's surprising, I have to say.
does your family, like, are they blown away by your success, by how like rapidly you became this huge account on Instagram and like known designer?
No, I don't think so. Okay, my mother and my sister, they are my knitting companions, so they are following me and they know, but my children, they don't care at all. They're like, he's knitting this.
They don't brag about you to their friends.
No, they don't, I promise you. They're more or less like, don't tell anyone that mother is knitting.
Is there like a big social scene for knitters in Sweden?
Yes, but it's Corona, and before Corona I didn't knit so much, so but of course there are fairs and there are a lot of these knitting cafes and so on, so it's getting bigger and bigger, and I think it's starting to come all of these things now. And when Corona is going away, I think it will come a lot of things.
Right.
People really do have to do something.
So now you finished the book. It's published. It's out there. I'm sure it's a year of work, year process of putting it together, right? Do you feel like withdrawal? Do you feel like there's an empty place now, or you're already so full of ideas of what's coming next?
Oh, I'm so full of ideas. I'm already starting with a new, thinking about a new book and so on. But of course, it's like I work with magazines, so I produce magazines, and then I produce magazines, and I'm producing it one week, and then it goes to print, and then it comes. So I'm quite used with this, seeing what I'm doing. So of course, it was very special when my book came and they called me from the publisher and said, "Oh, it's here, your book." And I was taking the bike and I was like a child, And when I have it, it's like, okay, that was it. And now let's go further. But I'm very proud of it, and it's very fun to have your own book. It feels like it's me. It's really me, this book.
Right. Do you feel like now that you look through it,
Mm.
you have this thing because like, oh, I wish I put this pattern instead of this pattern. Do you still sort of work on that same book in your head, or like once it went to print, you were at peace?
Oh, I'm in total peace with this book. I think it's really good, and I don't feel like, oh, I would have done like that instead. And more or less, okay, if it's something I want to change, maybe I do it better in next book. But
Right.
I think I really think it's good enough actually. So now I enjoy it, and I think it's, of course, there's always things you can improve, do better, but I think it's good enough to be a knitting book.
Right. So you also started YouTube channel.
Yes, more or less, because I have the same questions, how to do like that. And I can have 10 questions a day. So I think if I do a short movie, I can get people to look at it like in a small movie. So my plan was to do more, but then life comes and you forget about it. And then it's like, oh, but maybe someday I will do something more about it.
So you use it more for like short tutorials,
Yes,
like to
more
show
like that.
something.
Just short tutorials to be able to send to people when they ask me, because it's the same questions all the time. So
Right. Have you ever considered teaching how to knit mittens or how to do your double knitted blankets or any of that
no.
yourself as a teacher?
No,
Did
I
nobody suggest that yet?
yes, they ask me, but I think like I, I don't consider myself a knitter, as I said, and I learn myself through YouTube, and it feels very strange for me to try to learn people how to double knit when I don't actually know. I just go by, oh, this works, but I don't know if it's right, but it works for me. So
Is it difficult for you because of that, because you learn by yourself? Is it difficult for you to write those patterns and to explain clearly in the patterns the technique that you're using and decide how much you're going to explain?
but I decided not to explain so much. If I see an American pattern, there's so much text. So before I start with the pattern, I'm totally exhausted, and it stresses me. That is because it's like when I had the pattern with this Tannis Gray book, Star Wars, da da da, and I cannot even understand my own pattern because it's so much written, and I get confused. So my patterns are very, very, very short instructions. It's like cast on 68 stitches dot or some, so I don't write so much.
Do you
It's
ever get people complaining that it's so short and it's not enough information? And what kind of cast on do you use? Can I use this kind of cast on instead of this kind of cast on? Do you get that feedback?
I can do it, but I also get very many that are so happy that I do them this short. But if I get complained, it is from the American ones, because they are used to have this miles of text how to do it.
Right.
But I think if I do a mitten, for me, it doesn't matter if you cast on this way or do whatever you wish, because it's always like, I don't write how many rows. If you do a cuff, I don't write knit 25 rows. Knit how many you want. For me, it doesn't matter if it's 12 or 25. You do what you like. But people think that is very strange. Why doesn't you write? Don't you write how many rows it is? And
Right.
I'm like, it's your taste. If you don't, if you want to do 25, do it. And for me, it's depending on the day. Sometimes I do 10, and sometimes I do 30. Doesn't matter for me. It's just feeling.
You mentioned that the first patterns that you published that had the traditional designs, you just published them for free.
Mm.
Was that because you felt, and I'll explain you why I'm asking you this question. It's sort of like very current discussion in my brain.
Mm.
So, um, do you feel like when you use traditional patterns, traditional motifs, that it's not your design any longer, that you just utilize something that already exists and that's why you're not charging? And the reason I'm asking, so I was, for the first time ever, like I also started knitting 4 years ago, like recently. And for the first time ever, I decided not to follow a pattern, but just come up with something from my head and knit it. And I knitted that shawl, and it's very simple. It's triangular shawl with the lacy leaf border, and none of it is my original design, basically. So I took the border that already exists, I took the mesh that already exists, and I knitted simple triangular shawl. And so I asked on my Instagram, should I consider it my design, or am I just slapping other people's patterns together? Like, where do you draw for yourself, right? I mean, there's obviously a million opinions, but where do you draw this line for yourself, what you call your design and what you call something you just put together using other people's designs?
Yeah, but it's a tricky question, because I really, these one that I have for free, I have them for free because they are so good beginner patterns. It's the most easiest pattern I have, and they look very complex. If you don't know how to knit, they are extremely beautiful and they look complex. And I think it's very good for people to start knitting. So if they, oh, what should I knit for the first time? I will try to do mittens. Then I can say, download my and then they can try. And if they like it, they want to continue. Or so I do that more than that. I don't think it's my own design. But of course, it's like, if I take a picture, whose design is it? Is it the photographer's, or is it me that is doing it to pixels? Or it's a big question.
Right.
So I cannot answer. I think I don't, but it's not so important. I just want to make, I want people to laugh. I want people to be happy, and so on. So it's not, I don't feel like, oh, this is my design. This is very, for me, it's very important to be a designer. I don't really care. I just want to be relaxed about knitting. Knitting has saved me and made me sane. And I don't want to make a fuss about it. And like, I think people is taking it so seriously, and it's like, oh, how to do this? I don't dare to knit the mittens, so it's uncomplicated. Well, try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's not more than that, actually.
Right.
So,
well, talking about not stressing over knitting, so you had a book coming out.
yeah.
You have all these designs that you're coming out. Does that never stress you, like that the people want you to design this and that, and people asking you, can you design this? Like, does that demand, that interest in your work, does that ever stress you out? Those deadlines, or the expectation of people that you're gonna come up with something new, better, funnier, more interesting?
No, not at all, actually, because from the beginning, it wasn't meant for me to be a knitter or a knitter designer. It was just something that happened, and it just popped up in my life. And I decided really early that I will never ever knit a pair of mittens for someone. I will never design a pattern for someone. I just do it by feeling. And I stick to that all the time. So they asked me 2 years ago if I could do a book, and I said no, because I didn't want it to feel like I have to do something. But 1 year ago, I felt like I was feeling better, and I felt this could be a fun, if I can do it in 1 year and do it slowly and in my tempo, I think it could be a fun thing. So it went so slowly to do this book. And it has also just been fun with all the photo shooting and figuring out how to do the David Bowie mittens and how to do it. And so it's been a lot of fun. and not stress. And I never do, if someone asks me, can you do a pattern of this? I always say no. And then suddenly one day, oh, maybe it feels fun to do Leonard Cohen, and then I do it, but never ever on expectations.
Right. So you did the David Bowie mittens, but you also did the blanket with the same, was it the same design or did you adjust it for the blanket?
I adjusted it for a blanket, but it's no more or less the same. But it was very boring to knit that blanket. It was
really. Yeah, that
yes,
was my question basically. Like, do you use mittens as a swatch for the blanket, or it just happened that you tried it once and you're not looking forward to repeating that?
No, of course I use some of, but I have to redo them. I do them by hand, pixel by pixel. So if I have to do it on a blanket, it's not just to push a bottom. I have to do every pixel over again. So it's a lot of work for me because I don't have any automatically things. But it's easier to use if I done a squirrel or something. It's easier to use that image and make it bigger and put more things in also. So I can reuse it.
So let's say you go to a movie or you watch movie at home.
Yeah.
Does it automatically like pictures of blankets and
yes.
mittens pop in there?
I see everything in pixels. It's like when I was small, I played this video game Tetris. Everything comes in pixels and blocks, and it's the same here. It's like, oh, I have to build a pixel. Now, yesterday I was looking at this Netflix series, La Casa de Papel. So now I've done a pattern, so I will knit it this evening.
Do you have a library of images that you keep that you like, you see something and you're like, okay, let me just take a picture of it and like keep it for future ideas?
Yes, I have. And it could be anything. It could be in the nature, or it could be anything. I keep it, I store it, and then I forget I have it, and then I can find it a half year later, and oh, what is this? This was a great idea.
So what's the plan for you for the end of this year? Is there like book promotion that you're gonna be doing? Do you plan something for next year?
I was hoping, but of the Corona, everything is cancelled. And the fair that I was going to attend this autumn is also cancelled. So I think nothing. I will move this winter to Turkey. I live in Turkey in the winter time, so I will go there, and then I will knit some new mittens and design a new book, I think.
Is there like any way that people can buy the book online if they're not in Sweden? Like, is it available everywhere in the world?
Yes, we were working at it because I thought people were able to do it through this Bokus.com, but you could only do it if you lived in EU. But they were going to fix it with Amazon, I think. They were going to talk to Amazon. So hopefully in a couple of weeks, it's maybe you could buy it all over the world. I hope so.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
I'd really like to take a look at that one.
Yeah.
It looks like a fun book.
Mm.
Do you have a favorite pattern?
Yes, I have someone that I did one last week that was a piece and piece off. I don't know if you saw it. I think it's very funny. I still laughing at it when I did it. But I also like this. I have done Terminator. I like these people. I think it's funny with the people.
Right.
And I like my Michael Jackson pattern, but I think I'm the only one that likes it because no one buys it, but I think it's a very good pattern. It's a good design.
Do you ever get upset or disappointed at the sales of your pattern? Let's say you're working on something and you think it's going to be wonderful and you publish it and it doesn't sell. Like, does that happen, and how do you deal with that disappointment?
It happens all the time. I'm so surprised every time I do something, and then I do a pattern that I don't like, and then it sells. and the patterns I like the most, they don't sell. So it's very, I cannot learn what people want. It's impossible.
Right.
And
Well,
I never ever know. Every time I release a new pattern, it's like, oh, what happens? Oh, it sells. Oh, that's great. But I don't know why.
right. Well, it's sort of like trying to figure out the Instagram and like why one post
Oh,
becomes viral and another post gets like 0 views, you know? So
yes, it's the same. You have no idea.
right. So it's like I think like I figure, you know, it's like at some point I just stopped worrying about it and I just go day by
Oh,
day
yes,
and post
yes,
by
you go with
post.
the flow. Yeah, because Instagram is impossible to figure out. You
Right.
never know.
But I must say, like, I've met some of the most wonderful people on Instagram, and that's
Yeah.
how the idea of Fiberchats was born, actually, because I kept meeting such inspiring fiber artists from all over the place. And I was like,
Yeah.
you know, I want my followers and my friends to know those people. So that's how I came up with the idea of all these interviews.
Yeah. But it's also very, very funny because I have a pattern of Bob Marley, and for me, Bob Marley, I loved him when I grew up, and I think the pattern is very nice, but it never sells. And for me, I cannot understand. Of course, I sold some and I've seen some, but then I put it out last week or something again, and I think, oh, it's such a nice pattern. It's such a nice mittens. I really like it.
Right.
And I get no likes. No one likes it. And that is, I cannot believe. And then I have this Be Happy mittens that I think is so boring, but everyone loves them. And for me, it's I cannot understand why it is like that. It's
What do
just
you
like,
feel when you see other people knitting your designs, when you see on
oh,
Instagram,
it's
like
so
the pictures?
fun. I love it. It's so fun to see. And I love also when they do different colors, and if they do something, they do a cushion, and I think it's so funny to see people use it. And they do socks, and oh, I love when they tag me so I can be able to look at them. And I also try to, every time someone finish my projects, I try to post them on Instagram so people can see them, because it's also fun to see different color sets. And
Right. Do you
uh,
gravitate towards the same colors like yourself?
yeah, I think so. It's very easy to do the things you like the most. And then you come in on different periods. Now I like black and white, so everything is black and white, and then I go in another color or something. But it's very easy. I normally always like when it's a white background
Right.
and then a color, so I could do every mitten white background. But then I try to do something else, and then it doesn't turn out so good, and I regret that I didn't do white and so on.
I wish you most success with your book. I hope it's going to become internationally available so I can buy it, because I would love to knit some of your designs. And I just would love to have that book because it looked so colorful and so beautiful. And it just like you can't help but smile when you see it.
Oh, thank you so much.
And thank you for being my guest today. I really enjoyed our chat.
Oh, thank you so much. It was so fun to talk to you.
Thank you.